Scott just made the point.
Jefferson
Seems to be a lot more secure, not just.
An old female rocker who got raped years ago has triggered tirades by modern feminists and other rape victims for suggesting that how a woman dresses can play a role in her own sexual assault. Did Chrissie Hynde of the Pretenders step over the line? I'm PJTV's Scott Ott, joined with Bill Whittle and Stephen Cruiser, sitting in for Stephen Green, who's battling Thor, the storm weather god of the sky. You'll have to watch Trifecta Extra to find out what that means. Men, the Pretenders' lead singer Chrissie Hynde has a book coming out called Reckless, and she sat down for an interview with the Sunday Times of London in which she accepted blame for putting herself in a situation that led to her own rape at age 21, saying it was, quote, all her doing. Then she extended the personal story into a cautionary tale for other women, saying, if I'm walking around in my underwear and I'm drunk, who else's fault can it be? If I'm walking around and I'm very modestly dressed and keeping to myself and someone attacks me, then I'd say it's his fault. But if I'm being very Larry, which is a British term for ostentatiously attractive or flashy, if I'm being very Larry and putting it about and being provocative, then you are enticing someone who's already unhinged. Don't do that. Come on, that's just common sense. You know, if you don't want to entice a rapist, don't wear high heels so that you can't run from him. Now, Stephen Cruiser, the conventional wisdom among feminists is that men are wholly to blame for any sex act that goes beyond a woman's consent. Isn't it dangerous for a prominent woman like Chrissie Hynde to say that some women share the blame for their own assault?
I think when discussing such delicate issues, semantics need to be paid careful attention to here. And first of all, if Chrissie Hynde wants to blame herself for something that happened to her, it's wholly within her right to do so, okay? She can do that. The way she presents this, my problem with it is that she presents this from the feminist perspective that all men have a rapist lurking inside of them waiting to just come out. That's the way she worded it. She said, you're just enticing someone who's already unhinged. She didn't say you should be able to pick out the rapist in a crowd. She made it sound like, you know, we're all willing to cross that line at some point if provoked. And as we all know, in normal, decent society, we're presented with lines to cross or we're provoked all the time, and we don't do that. That's the difference between, you know, regular people and sociopaths. We don't cross the lines. We don't do things like that. But having said all of that, I'm also the parent of a teenage daughter, and we talk about situational awareness all the time, which I do think is extremely important. You were responsible ultimately when you go out in public for kind of assessing the situation and figuring out what's going on around you. It's important when, you know, it's important when you're running down the street. It's important when you're walking down the street. It's important when you're driving. It's important for anybody, male or female, and there's a conversation to be had about that in any kind of situation. You know, you can't just go blundering through life hoping for the best because you've been raised to believe in a consequence-free society. There's just bad things happen, bad people exist, and it behooves you to pay attention when you're doing anything in any kind of situation. I think so. If she ends up having a conversation or creating a conversation about situational awareness and maybe young women becoming a little more responsible and taking ownership of some of that, that's fine. But if she's presenting it as, you know, they're all rapists waiting to happen and it's totally on you, I think both parts of that are wrong.
Well, Bill Whittle, as you know, rape is not just a sexual crime. It's an act of violence and domination, and many women have been raped and sexually assaulted while minding their own business, dressed modestly, and doing nothing to appeal to a man's desire, at least overtly. Should Chrissie Hynde apologize for blaming the victims?
First of all, just to go directly to your question, I am so heartily tired of people saying what they believe to be true and then being forced to apologize for what they just said. I am over this regardless of what she said or what I think about it. This idea that you say something that is a belief of yours and then instantly you have to apologize, I think is the end of the world. So no, she doesn't have to apologize for anything. It's her opinion. She's entitled to it. Now, the issue, of course, is what she was really trying to get at. And I think the answer, Scotty, is that both things can be true because they're not mutually exclusive. It is categorically true without any question or any shade of any doubt whatsoever, that no matter how provocative a woman is dressed, if she is assaulted and raped, it is not her fault. She is not the instigator of the crime. The crime is committed by the person that commits the assault, and there is no two shades about it. It's not up for discussion. If a woman is dressed in a miniskirt walking down the street late at night and is raped, it is not her fault. It's the rapist's fault. He needs to be punished for it and pay for it. With that said, what Steve Cruiser said about situational awareness is exactly true. For example, as a pilot, I get cleared onto a runway for takeoff. Every single time I taxi onto that runway, I look to my left to make sure that nobody's going to land on my head. I'm in the right. I've been cleared. There's somebody in the tower told me it's okay. But if somebody made a mistake, I'm dead. I'm in the right, but I'm also dead. It's just care. It's awareness. It's carefulness. So the two things that Chrissie Hynde brings up that are both mutually true and not mutually exclusive are, number one, it is true that if a person is raped, it is the fault of the rapist and never the fault of the victim. Full stop. Nothing behind that. However, if you are walking down a street late at night and you're very provocatively dressed, you are increasing the odds of calling attention to yourself. And for drunken, deranged potential rapists, which, as Steve also correctly points out, may be a vanishingly small slice of the population, you are increasing your risk. So just to be crystal clear, what Chrissie Hynde, I think, is saying is you can, in fact, increase your risk of being raped without ever making it your own fault. I think that's really what the balance of it is. And so it becomes every single adult's individual choice about how they want to play that balance. How much do they think they can protect themselves by dressing more modestly versus the fact that in a free society, men and women both should be able to go out on the town and get dressed up and have a great time without being assaulted and raped at the end of the evening.
Well, it's interesting, as some Trifecta fans know, we discuss these topics and these questions beforehand, but we don't discuss what our answers or conclusions are going to be. So it's always interesting to me when we come up with similar conclusions. And this is mine. If you're a rich man and you flaunt your wealth, you wear the Rolex, carry a wad of cash, drink martinis, and fondle a Maserati key fob, and someone robs you, that's not your fault. If you get robbed on a poorly lit street in a ramshackle neighborhood in Detroit as you're crawling on the pavement trying to find the keys to your Maserati at 2 in the morning, it's still not your fault. You might have been robbed as well on Wall Street at noon, sober. The thief is to blame. However, prudence and wisdom suggest that you take appropriate precautions about where and when you walk about in your "look at me, I'm rich" outfit. Truth be told, men who set out to rape will rape a woman in a bikini or a burqa. They'll rape a grandma. They'll rape a baby. They don't much care if she's pretty or pretty ugly. They're rapists. Rape is what they do. But many sexual assaults spring from mutual caresses gone wild that lead to non-consensual sex acts that one or both parties later regret. Chrissie Hynde's admission that she was young and reckless should be praised for its honesty. She never suggested that a rapist is the victim of sexual enticement. She's merely affirming the age-old saying, dress the way you want to be treated, and encouraging women to exercise what the military calls situational awareness. My grandmother called this common sense. And now that the Pretenders' lead singer is old enough to be a grandmother, so does she. For Stephen Cruiser, Bill Whittle, and the entire Trifecta crew at PJTV.com, I'm Scott Ott.